name is Marcus, and this story happened in June of 2019, around a week and a half after school let out for the summer. Me and my cousins Demetrius, Trayvon, and Jamel were having a sleepover for my 13th birthday, which we had been planning on for months. They arrived at around 6 p.m., and we were prepared for an awesome night. Turns out that the night would end up traumatizing us for life, but we'll get to that later. For the first hour and a half of our sleepover, we ate junk food, listened to music, and played video games on my PlayStation 4. After finishing a few rounds of Fortnite, Jamel wanted to go outside and play football. It was a warm but stormy night though, so we wouldn't really be able to play football. However, Demetrius said we could play another game out there, and we ended up deciding to play Manhunt in my backyard. Playing in normal weather was fun, but playing in the rain gave us a different feeling. It felt more relaxing in a way, and somehow made the game more fun to play. To give you an image, my backyard is quite large. When you walk out of my back door and look straight ahead, there is a dense forest, and the left and the right side of my house are fenced in. We have a deck, a shed, and many other things back there, which makes for a perfect place to play football, manhunt, or whatever other sport. Anyways, once we got there, we split into even teams. Demetrius and Jamel got into a team, which left me with Trayvon. Me and Trayvon volunteered to hide first, which Demetrius and Jamel agreed to. We all agreed that the deck would be the safe spot, so we had to start on the opposite side of the yard, near the woods, while the seeker started inside the house and counted. I ran about 15 feet into the tree line and hid behind a tree, able to see where Demetrius and Jamel were. I was unsure where Trayvon went, however. After I heard the seeker stop counting, I saw 2 flashlights bobbing around the yard, going this way and that. I began walking to the left of my yard, towards the shed. I hid behind the space between the fence and the shed, and I peeked around the corner, trying to spy on Demetrius and Jamel. They both turned around and walked towards the right side of the house, and then I saw a person in dark clothing emerge from the darkness of the side of my house and run towards the woods. Trayvon was wearing a dark blue t-shirt and black shorts, so I didn't really think much of it. I guess Jamel heard the running due to the wetness of the grass, so he began sneaking up to the tree line while saying Trayvon's name in sort of a mocking tone. However, just then, Trayvon came out from under the deck and began screaming, "Don't go over there, that's not me." I was confused because I thought I had just seen Trayvon run into the woods, but then I put 2 and 2 together and I felt a pain in my stomach. I came out from behind the shed and I began shouting that the game was off and to get back inside my house now. He ran inside and shut the back door. Demetrius, who was the oldest of us at 15, said that he would stay at the window and watch to see if the guy would come out of the woods. Me, Trayvon, and Jamel ran upstairs to my parents' bedroom and closed the door, but we kept it unlocked just in case Demetrius ever needed to come upstairs. I felt that it's worth mentioning at this point that my parents were out of town at this time, and that they wouldn't be coming back until the morning. We stood with our ears pressed to the door to see if we could hear anything, and we did. We heard Demetrius scream at the top of his lungs, and his footsteps came running up the stairs. We opened the door, pulled him inside, and he locked the door and pulled out a chair and stuck it under the doorknob. Demetrius wasn't and still isn't exactly in the best shape, so he was out of breath and he was stuttering his words pretty bad. Jamel was repeatedly asking what was wrong, but Trayvon told us all to shut up. We did, and we were able to hear the sound of glass breaking and an object hitting the floor, most likely a rock. Following that, we heard many doors downstairs open, along with heavy footsteps. After 2 minutes of waiting in silence, we began hearing footsteps coming over to the stairs. We all scrambled to hide, but we barely had enough time. Me and Jamel hid under the bed, while Demetrius and Trayvon hid in the wardrobe. We sat in silence as we heard doors being opened upstairs. When you walk upstairs in my house, on the right, there's a door directly to your right, which leads to the bathroom. There are 3 other doors on the left, and my parents' bedroom is the last door on the left. So this was the last door to be messed with. When the person on the other side of the door realized it was locked, he began to laugh. It was a raspy and crazy laugh, something that still sends chills down my spine every time I think back on this. Jamel came out from under the bed, and he found the phone that was on my dad's work desk, and he dialed 911. The man on the other side of the door began kicking at the door, which made all of us scream. Jamel tried to stay as calm as possible while talking to the operator, but I would be lying if I said he was anywhere near calm. Trayvon came out of the closet and rummaged around in my dad's work desk, and he found a screwdriver. He said that he was going to swing open the door and stab the man, which would give us enough time to run out of the house. Jamel wrapped up his call, and Trayvon pushed the chair aside and swung open the door. The man had his arms outstretched in front of him, and Trayvon stabbed him as hard as he could in the forearm, which sent the man into hysterical pain. We were all able to run past him, downstairs, out the front door, and across the street to my neighbor Mary's house. It was around 8:30 p.m., so she was quite mad that we had woken her up. However, when we told her what happened, she let us in gracefully. We heard sirens come down our street under 5 minutes later, and we watched as many officers stormed into my house, and they came out shortly after with a man in handcuffs. It was a satisfying sight to see, even to my 13-year-old self. 4 years later, and I still remember that night, down to every last detail. In May, Demetrius, who's now 19 years old, sent a text message in a Snapchat group chat that I'm in with most of my cousins about why he screamed that night. Apparently, while he was sitting at the window watching the trees, a man came running at full speed from the tree line towards the door with an impossibly wide smile, according to him. To this day, that night remains the scariest thing to ever happen to me, or any of my cousins for that matter. I've always loved going to my grandparents' house, just because I love to see them and my favorite cousins. I kind of hate the house itself, though. Every time that I've visited their home, I've had a strange feeling that I can only describe as paranoia. I've had many creepy things happen to me in that house, and the first thing that I can remember is when me, my brother, and my cousins Emma and George were playing hide and seek. Emma and I were seeking, and we gave my brother and cousins 60 seconds to hide because the house is big, and it has a lot of hiding places. After we counted to 60, we began searching. We went from my grandparents' bedroom, then the bathroom, kitchen, guest room, everywhere, but unfortunately, we couldn't find them. We then remembered that we didn't check the basement. Emma didn't want to go down there, but in my little boy mind, I am not a scared loser mind, I didn't want to seem scared, if you know what I mean. So I made her go with me. I had always been scared of that basement, but I had to find them. The door to the basement didn't have a lock, so anyone could just open the door and hide down there. We opened the door, and we began to slowly go downstairs with an almost dead flashlight. I remember having this strange feeling inside, and Emma whispered, "Do you think they will try to scare us?" I didn't have the time to answer her, because right when we were on the last step, the door behind us slammed shut. Emma screamed, and I dropped my flashlight to the ground. I panicked, and I immediately picked up my flashlight from the floor, and I tried to turn it on, but it was completely dead. He then sprinted up the stairs, opened the door, and sprinted outside to the front yard. Our grandma was out there watering her flowers. When she saw how scared we were, she asked what happened, and we told her. She said that it was probably my brother and cousin just messing with us, and that they probably saw us go into the basement and close the door to scare us. At this point, we were searching for them for about 30 minutes or so. "The game is over," my grandma said, and she came with us to find them. We again searched the whole house, but this time with my grandma, and we still weren't able to find the boys anywhere. Eventually, my grandma got scared and decided to call my grandpa, who wasn't home. My grandma always had trouble hearing, so she always puts her phone on speaker. Me and Emma froze when we heard our grandpa say something along the lines of, "Oh, don't worry, the boys are with me. We left for the supermarket to get dinner like 40 minutes ago." Yes, my brother and cousin are way older than us. At the time, they were like 14 and 15, and I was 9. Emma was the youngest at just 8 years old. We learned that they never even played with us. When we were counting, they left the house, and they saw that our grandpa was about to go to the store, so they went with him. My grandma says that she was outside the whole time, and she says that she never closed the basement door. Keep in mind, it wasn't a normal door closing. It was like a very hard slamming door. There was nobody else besides us in that house, so I don't have a rational explanation for this. Neither of us did. The door is also quite heavy, so there was no way that the wind could have closed it. The next day, my mom and dad came and picked us up and we went home. My father was in the army at the time, and he had to change battalions, so we moved to another city. Now we were over 400 kilometers away from my grandparents' house, so we didn't visit them near as often as we used to, only 1 or 2 times a year maybe. It was Christmas in 2014. My dad got some days off of work, and he decided that we would travel the 400 kilometers and spend the holidays with our whole family. I was feeling nervous, but when we got there, I actually felt alright this time. That strange feeling was gone. Well, at least at first. Everything was great until after we were done with the family dinner and everyone was going to bed. There were so many people, so there wasn't much room for everybody. I wanted to sleep in the same room as my brother, but he was kind of a dick and he didn't let me. So my grandma put me on the couch downstairs in the living room, right next to the Christmas tree and the dang basement door. It's safe to say that I was a little scared and I couldn't fall asleep for a long time, because I was always staring at that basement door the whole night, thinking that at any moment, something would open it and drag me down there. Eventually, after some time, I had fallen asleep, but not for long. I woke up in the dark and I turned on my tablet to see the time. It was 4 something in the morning. I turned to the other side with my head facing the little hallway towards the basement door and I closed my eyes. A minute later, I heard what sounded like footsteps. My grandparents' home is covered with an old wooden floor, and I knew that it did this often. Sometimes old homes just make noises. But I was also thinking that someone may have been walking towards the bathroom near the downstairs entrance. I waited a little bit and no one ever entered the bathroom, so I opened my eyes and I peeked down the hallway. I froze when I saw something like a black foggy mass. It had legs and what looked like a head, but it wasn't doing anything, just walking around the hallway like it was nervous about something. I was looking at it for like a second, and then I started screaming like crazy. Moments later, my grandpa stormed out of his room, turning on all the lights. And the moment he turned the light on, the figure just vanished. I was crying like crazy, and my grandfather was thinking that someone was trying to break in, so he started checking every room. Everyone woke up and came downstairs. They all asked me what happened, and I told them everything that I saw. I expected them to think that I was crazy, but instead, they just looked strangely at each other. It's safe to say that I feel like I ruined Christmas that year. Everybody went back to bed, and I changed rooms with my brother. He was making himself look brave and decided to sleep downstairs. My mom woke me up at like 10 a.m. for the Christmas presents, so I rushed downstairs, not really just for the presents, but to see how my brother got through the night. But when I got there, he wasn't there. My father said that my brother wasn't feeling very well, and that he went out for a walk to calm down. Shortly after I opened my presents, I heard the front door opening, and later on my brother walked in. My mom went up to him and immediately confronted him because he smelled like weed, and she was pissed off about it, but she didn't want to cause a scene in front of the whole family. My brother told me that when we all went upstairs the night before, he turned on the TV to watch something because he wasn't that tired. He found some movies to watch, and moments later the TV turned off by itself and then back on. He exclaimed that at first he thought he pressed the remote by accident, but the remote was on the table next to him, so that was quite literally impossible. That's when he heard the same footsteps which I heard earlier. Then, the light in the hallway turned on and off. And then it all stopped for a second. After that, he said he heard something like people talking loudly, but he couldn't make out any words. I was speechless, because my brother wasn't the type of guy who would lie just to scare me, and he was looking dead serious. I even saw his hand shaking at some point while he was telling me the story. My brother said that he knew the reason why this was happening, but he didn't tell me. Later that day, I was alone with my mother and I asked her why all this was happening and if there was something that we should be worried about. This is what she told me. So my mother is the oldest of 3 kids, and when she was born, my grandfather was looking to buy a house because they were living in a small apartment at the time. So we found a house for cheap. That house had a strange background story, which half of the town knew about. The house was built in the early 1950s by a young couple, but they didn't live there for long. One day, they just disappeared and were never seen again. The house stayed vacant for some time, and later on, another couple bought the house. They lived there for 3 weeks, and they decided to leave in the middle of the night one night, but their cars were hit by a train, and they died instantly. Again, years later, a young man decided to buy the house, which was on sale for only a fraction of the original at that point, because everyone was thinking that the house was cursed. The young man lived there a little longer than everyone else, about a year, but apparently he went crazy and hung himself in the basement. People in the town said that he was perfectly okay before purchasing the house. The house stayed vacant for many years, and then another couple decided to buy it. My grandparents. They didn't seem to care about the curse. I don't think they were believing it. They thought that everything was a coincidence. They remodeled the whole house and they cleaned it really well. My grandmother said that she used to see weird things in the middle of the night sometimes, like shadows. But every time she saw something, she always brought a priest to cleanse the house, and everything was getting better for a while. My grandfather said that he has never seen anything, but he will often hear footsteps and voices. My mom and aunt said that they have seen the shadows too, but only a few times. My uncle was the one that has seen the most. My mom said that he was complaining about some woman being in his room every night. He was hearing voices calling him by his name. I wish I could have asked him for more details, but unfortunately he died before I was even born in a motorcycle accident. I don't really know if it's related to the house, but I really hope it's not. Turns out that the house was built over an Ottoman cemetery, which I think is the reason for the hauntings. My grandparents passed away a month from each other last year, and we decided to put the house up for sale, but no luck for now. I was staying at a local Airbnb with my wife when I was visiting my family in Wyoming. We stayed with my parents for a couple of days, and we enjoyed each other's company. But after a few days, we decided to check out an Airbnb a few hours south of my mom's house. We were looking for a nice getaway and something fun to do before it was going to be back to our monotonous life of working every day at jobs that we both hated. We had a whole weekend to look forward to it, and it was only $75 a night to stay at the place we found, which was not too bad at all. The house wasn't huge, but a decent size for sure. Not two-story, but it had a basement, decked out with a man cave. It had a bar, pool table, foosball, and much more. It was pretty cool. We didn't hang out down there much, but it was still pretty cool. Over the course of the weekend, we visited local trails, went swimming in the in-ground pool in the backyard, and even went fishing at a nearby lake. Last night we were there, something insane happened. My wife was sound asleep, and for some reason I couldn't sleep, and I was feeling restless. I decided to get up real quick and go to the bathroom and smoke a joint real quick outside. Halfway through my joint, I noticed something in the distance. It was quite far away, but I could tell it was a person. Or at least I was quite sure that it was a person. I mean, what else could it have been? It definitely was way too tall to be an animal. It seemed to be standing still. There was no way of knowing if they even noticed me, or if they were looking at me. It was very dark, and they were that far away. It just looked like a shadow. The shadow was on the beach, across the street, and it faded before my eyes out of sight, as the houses across from me blocked my vision. I was about to go back inside, when I thought, what the hell? Maybe I'll just go for a quick walk and smoke another joint. By then I would surely be tired enough to fall asleep, I thought. A whole nother joint, and a 15-minute walk or so later, I was sure to be exhausted after that. I grabbed another joint from inside and a snack, and I started walking to the beach. It was a beautiful night, and there was nobody around. I found a nice bench to sit at, after walking for a little while, and I was just appreciating the outdoors. The moon looked beautiful, and with me being stoned as shit, it only added to the scenery. But just before I was about to get up to walk back, I realized that I lost track of time, and I also didn't have my phone. I really hope that Avery, my wife, didn't wake up in the midst of me being gone for an hour, because she would probably be worried about where I went. It was around 11 o'clock at night when I saw the door. The front door to our Airbnb was wide open. My first thought that something horrific happened, and that there was no way I left the door wide open with my wife, alone in the middle of the night. I would never make a mistake that stupid. I rushed into our room, and there she was, lying in bed, just like she was before I left. Now I felt some great amount of relief fly off my shoulders, but that still didn't explain why the door was wide open. Maybe I just made a stupid, horrific mistake. I just thought there was no way I would let something that stupid happen. I have always been a very protective person and very aware of my surroundings. Maybe that's why I got the urge to check around the house. As soon as I thought to do that, I had this feeling throughout my entire body of impending doom. I looked through each room on the main floor, and there wasn't a sign of anything or anyone at all. I realized I still had to check the basement, as I hadn't yet. I walked down there slowly, and I turned the lights on. It was quiet. Eerily quiet and very uncomfortable. I had to force myself down those stairs to see if by slight chance there was somebody down there. When all of a sudden, I heard a ding, like from a phone. It sounded like a text message notification, and it definitely wasn't my phone. My heart was beating as fast as it possibly could before it was about to explode completely. I turned the corner and looked across the room, and I saw no one again. What I did see was one of the egress windows wide open. I ran over to the window, and on the way, I had to walk past a couch, and there was a phone that I heard a minute prior on the floor next to the recliner. Whoever's phone it was blowing up, and it had 10 plus messages. The last couple of texts said to get out of there, and that the man is back home, which was me. The guy must have escaped through the basement window. Maybe I really forgot to lock the front door that night. Or maybe he let himself in by picking the lock. Either way, that was all that happened, and I couldn't be more thankful that nothing else came of that night. I woke my wife up and I told her everything, and we packed early and left that night. I didn't want to risk whoever it was trying to come back while we were dead asleep, especially.